growing food in small spaces.
Welcome to the Wellbeing Garden, where you'll learn, grow and thrive with expert horticulturalist Kath Manuel.
Welcome to the Wellbeing Garden. I'm Kath Manuel and I'm so glad you've joined me here today. In this episode, I'm sharing with you 5 of my favorite and really simple ways to grow food, or you could be growing herbs or flowers in small spaces. Now, many people living in urban areas want to create edible gardens and grow healthy food, but they think they need a lot of space to grow. So if this is you, then you are going to love this episode. I want to share these ideas with you as I enjoy growing this way, and although I live on a semi-rural property and I've got probably about an acre of space to grow, I actually don't have the time to grow through all of the space that I have. So over the last few years, as has got a little busier for me with my family and my business, I want to make sure that I'm enjoying my gardening time and not feeling like it's a chore. I've actually reduced back or cut back the space in my kitchen garden, and now I'm growing in smaller spaces. I don't feel so overwhelmed with so much to do. I'm actually enjoying the time I have out there, and I've got enough space to grow the food and the flowers and the beautiful herbs that I really want to be harvesting and cooking and providing for myself and my family, and also sharing with friends without that overwhelmed feeling of just having way too much space to grow in. Although I do love the space, I just find it's much better, I guess, to simplify things. So a lot of these methods I'm sharing with you today are ways that I actually love to grow my fresh food. So it's not really about the space that you have, it's also about the time that you have available as well for growing healthy gardens. So these methods are also perfect for enjoying gardening activities in aged care homes or with community organisations, as the gardeners can enjoy these activities together and they'll have a lot of fun and they're easy things to do, so it's really nice to do in a group setting. Also, this is really good if you're renting an apartment or a home and you want to be able to take your gardens with you when you go. You're going to love these methods because they're very easy to transport. So the first small space growing method that I'm going to share today is with sprouts and microgreens. Now I call these itty bitty little leaves, and you're eating the first few leaves that have sprouted from the seed. So it's kind of like growing a mini kitchen garden indoors, like even in your kitchen, literally. So they're a lot of fun to grow. They're really good for kids to have an understanding of gardening and have that first experience of gardening and growing fresh food. These two methods are really exciting and fun and simple to do for kids as well. So you may have seen packets of sprouts for sale in your supermarkets or your health food stores, wherever you can find fresh, healthy ingredients. Now, sprouts are actually grown in a glass jar, and what you do is you soak them overnight the very first time you're starting. That helps to clean off the seeds and also to remove the coating that the seeds have on them, ready to sprout. Then each day you rinse them in fresh water and you leave them to drain. After about 5 days, you have these fresh, leafy, crunchy, amazing little sprouts, which are packed with flavor, nutrients, and vitality. They are amazing. They really pack a punch when it comes to eating healthy food. Sprouts are one of the top things. So when we talk about superfoods, sprouts are right at the top of the list. So a few of my favorites to grow, and a few that you might have seen in your supermarkets or your local stores, are alfalfa. So you may have noticed alfalfa in little packets, either in little plastic packets. At the store, you might have noticed mung beans or snow pea sprouts or chickpeas, and even broccoli seeds can be sprouted, and they're absolutely delicious. Now, the other method for growing is called microgreens, and these are really similar, but they're grown in a shallow layer of soil, usually a seed raising mix, which is what we grow seeds in ready to grow our plants. It's exactly the same method, but you're not growing plants to end up putting out into the garden or into larger containers. You're growing these seeds, and when they sprout, you let them grow for about 10 days, and then they're ready to harvest. And what you do is you trim off the little stem and you eat the leaves and all. Sometimes I've actually noticed that the whole little baby plant has come out of the soil. You can rinse off the roots and make sure you get all the soil off, and they're actually used to garnish. So if you think about chefs in beautiful restaurants or something that you might have watched on TV, you'll actually notice that they garnish a lot of meals with these tiny little leaves or beautiful tiny little flowers, and it makes the dish just look like a work of art. These are microgreens, or they could be sprouts, but usually they're microgreens. Now, my favorites with these ones is kale, and I love it because kale is a cool season crop. So when I'm growing kale out in my gardens, I only grow those through the cooler months. But when I grow kale as a microgreen, you can actually grow them all year round because you're not taking them through the whole process of growing them out in the garden, which they wouldn't grow very well. They would struggle a lot through the warmer months out in the garden. But as microgreens, they're only germinating or sprouting, and they're coming up, and about 10 days later, you're going to be eating them. So they're going to be okay as long as you're in the climate where they will actually sprout. Kale year round is fabulous. Now, radish is another one. Radish is amazing as a microgreen. It's got that beautiful little oniony kind of peppery flavor to it. So it's really concentrated in their flavors with microgreens, which adds another beautiful boost to the flavors of meals that you're adding microgreens to. So we've got kale and radish. Broccoli is another beautiful one. Rocket is amazing because you've got those lovely little frilly leaves, again with that beautiful peppery flavor. You can grow wheat, so that's like wheatgrass, which you can trim off and add to your green smoothies or other things you might be making. And also you can grow snow peas. Now you can grow many edible plants as microgreens, but just make sure you avoid the poisonous leaves of plants like tomatoes. So microgreens really are any edible leaves that you can eat can generally be grown as microgreens. Now I've written a blog on growing microgreens, so I'll make sure I put the link in the show notes for you to access. So you can click on the link and then just follow my super easy methods for growing microgreens. Now my next suggestion for growing in small spaces is with a group or cluster of pots or beautiful containers. So these are great if you live in an apartment and you have a sunny patio to group a few pots, or if you're located in a villa or a townhouse, or really any space. Actually, I have groups of pots out on my patio here, and they always look fabulous. You could try growing in clay or some terracotta pots, or beautiful ceramic glazed pots, or even colored plastic pots, or any container, as long as you make sure it has drainage holes so the water can drain out, because you don't want to be growing your plants in containers or pots that the water is being held in there, because then the roots will get too wet, they'll rot, they'll be prone to diseases and all sorts of things. So you've really got to make sure any container that you are growing in does have drainage holes in the bottom so that water can get out. Now in your grouping of pots, you could grow an assortment of plants like some lovely leafy greens like kale I've already mentioned, silver beet, or an assortment of lettuce. So I've grown before mixed lettuces where you just pick those leaves as you need them. You don't pick the whole plant. So you could get months and months out of a lovely group of frilly and colored foliage lettuce, and you just pick them as you need. And then what you can do is mix them up with some parsley, chives, chervil, basil. There's so many herbs that you can group them with. And so you've got a lovely mix that you could just pick and make a nice fresh garden salad. You could also grow some edible flowers amongst them as well, like violas or nasturtiums or calendula. and then you pick those and you sprinkle the flowers in the salad that you're making. So it's almost like you're growing a salad garden in a cluster of pots. So you've got different sizes, different shapes, different heights, different widths of containers, and you group them in a lovely sunny corner to grow everything, and they're really super close to the kitchen or wherever you're going to be picking them, and really quick and easy then to use. A mixture of pots and plants looks stunning, but they're also super practical as you've got a variety of crops to harvest from all the time. And again, like I mentioned before, if you are moving house, you just pick them all up and you take them with you. Really easy to do. Now, my next suggestion for growing in small spaces is to consider growing fruit trees in large pots. And although I've got plenty of space for fruit trees growing in the ground, which I do in my garden, I still have large potted fruit trees around the place because I just really love them. I love the look of a lovely lemon or a citrus or other fruit trees in big tubs sitting throughout my garden. So if you've got limited space, or you might be needing to move at some stage, what you could do is try growing dwarf fruit trees, as they're smaller plants but they produce loads of fruit. One of my favorites is lemon Maya. Now, this is not a dwarf fruit tree, but it's a beautiful lemon that is really suitable for growing in a container, and it produces loads of the sweetest, most beautiful, juicy fruit. I love using lemon Maya in most of my cooking, and I love adding it to, say, a glass of mineral water with some fresh mint and some ice. Perfect on a sunny summer day. You could also try growing blueberries, which I've got my blueberries growing in containers. Raspberries or other berries grow really well in containers, and also most of your stone fruit, like your apricots and peaches. So they're all happy to grow in containers. Another suggestion for growing in a small space is vertical gardens. Now, these are gardens that grow up, which I love. They add a most beautiful color and interest to a really plain wall or a plain corner that just really needs some life. They're great for narrow spaces, so if you've got a long area that you're wondering how to fit some plants in, as long as it's getting some sunshine on a bare wall or a fence, but in a narrow space, you can grow plants up a trellis or a pole, or put up some wire, or consider creating a pallet garden, which are actually fixed to the wall. Now, pallet gardens are basically just a wooden pallet, which they're great because you're recycling. You fill them with soil. You do need to put some matting, like some weed mat or shade cloth, or some extra pieces of timber around the edge of that to hold the soil and the plants in. But these are great for small herbs and flowers, and then you fix that to your wall, a lovely sunny space, and the plants are going to be hanging on that wall, and that just saves space. So if you don't have a lot of space, or you've got a walkway that you really can't put pots or anything else in because it might stop people walking through, then consider a vertical garden which takes up that space on bare walls. Now, I've found a lot of beautiful ideas for vertical gardens on Pinterest. So if you really like using Pinterest, or you've never tried Pinterest before, it's just pinterest.com. There's a fabulous app that you can get on your devices and on your smartphones. When you go into Pinterest, just do a search of vertical gardens or pallet gardens. And while you're there, make sure you check out my Pinterest boards, because I've got lots of information and gardening ideas. So when you're into Pinterest, just do a search for Kath Manuel and you'll find me in there. What I'll do is make sure I put the link in the show notes so you can access my Pinterest page instantly. I've also created a few boards with ideas for horticultural therapy activities, for resources around your garden. You'll find lots of my blogs and information on my Pinterest pages. So have a little look around. I love searching through Pinterest because it just gives me visual ideas for things that I might like to do, and then I can go and access it. And one of the great things about Pinterest is you can create your own boards and gather or pin lots of beautiful images to your boards, and that gives you inspiration for creating your own beautiful gardens in small spaces. So you really could get some amazing ideas by looking at Pinterest. Now, when you're going to grow your vertical gardens, you could consider growing climbing beans or peas. Cucumbers are great, or a passion fruit looks beautiful up a really bare wall. Just put some wire up and grow a stunning passion fruit. And you can put a long tub at the base or on the ground or up on a bench, and then grow your climbing plants from that. And then what you can do is plant some gorgeous little herbs or edible flowers around the soil. So you've got the vertical plants that are growing up, and you've got the lovely little herbs or flowers around the soil. It's wonderful for space saving, and you're mixing up on the crops that you could grow. Perfect for growing again in that narrow space or a very small space. You will brighten up a long narrow area, but just make sure there's enough sunshine for those plants to grow. Now, my last suggestion is hanging baskets, another one that I love. These I find just brighten up any dull space. So whether it's around a pergola, around some areas like, say for example, at the front of my house, I have hanging baskets with geraniums in them just to add some extra bright color. And geraniums grow really well in hanging baskets, and they don't need a lot of water, so I find that really good if they're a little self-sufficient. But they add color and they can add beautiful smells to a space. A couple of ways to grow hanging baskets is with a wire basket, which is lined with a coconut fiber, or you can use plastic baskets. Now, the good thing with the plastic hanging baskets is they have a little tray on the bottom. They do hold some water in there, which is really good for giving the plants access to water over time. So what you could do is grow a mixture of flowers. Like I said, I have geraniums in mine, which adds a beautiful bright color in some reds and lovely pinks. You could also grow annual flowers, so they look really pretty, and then you change those each season. So you might like to grow some petunias or violas or pansies or nasturtiums. All have gorgeous color and they brighten up a beautiful space. Now, if you are in an aged care home or somewhere that a lot of people are coming together and enjoying outdoor spaces, hanging baskets are beautiful just to add such a lovely color and interest into any areas. You might also want to think about growing some herbs in hanging baskets. So oregano and thyme are beautiful. And then what you can do is add a little rosemary to the middle of the hanging basket. That's actually giving that a little bit of height. And then the oregano and the thyme are growing around the edge and they're growing down. So it really gives it some height and some hanging down little plants to give it, again, lovely interest to that. And they will also produce beautiful smells, and the bonus of being able to harvest them for cooking, which we love. The other thing you can think about growing is your mint. So anything from the mint family would grow very well in a hanging basket, but I would consider using a plastic hanging basket for these because mint roots don't like to go dry, so really they need that moisture in with them to grow really well. You could try growing your peppermint or your common mint. Spearmint you could try. The peppermint I love, the Japanese peppermint, because that's what I make my peppermint tea out of. Some people call that mentha as well. If you really like to drink fresh peppermint tea, you could grow some in a hanging basket. The other one that I love is the chocolate mint, which is just divine when you add that to some ice cream or fruit salad. It gives it quite a chocolatey flavor. So mint as well is wonderful to grow in hanging baskets, and you could put 2 or 3 different varieties of mint and have a couple of baskets hanging around and just access them as you need it. There's 5 different ways, just super easy ways, that you can grow delicious vegetables or herbs and some beautiful flowers in any space, big or small. Now, just a few extra tips for your little mini gardens to help them thrive. One is use the best potting mix that you can buy. Like, really, it's worth getting the best premium potting mix that you can find because your plants will love you for it. Even better if you can get organic potting mix or organic potting medium. Some people call this compost, so it does depend on your location. I know when I've been in the UK and gardening, it's called compost. So it just depends what you call it in your location, but it's the medium that the plants grow in containers, and it is a special blend that's for plants growing in containers, which is very different than the soil mix for plants going in the ground. So get the best premium mix that you can to grow your lovely garden in. And my next suggestion is grow a mixture of plants. Now, we call this intercropping, or you could also call it companion planting, which helps the soil health, and it also helps to reduce the pests that come into your plant. So rather than growing one plant or one food crop, grow a mixture of 2 or 3 plants in the containers together. A couple of ideas are, say, try growing some green leafy vegetables. Your kale or your silver beet or your chard would grow really nicely together with some herbs or some flowers, which add colour, flavour, and all those delicious smells. And also you could then add a few extra sensory plants. So I do have an article on growing sensory plants, so I'll make sure I include that link in the show notes for you. And you can find some extra information on the different plants that are considered sensory plants and maybe include those into your little groupings of pots or containers. And my last tip is to apply a regular dose of organic liquid fertilizer. Now, I suggest every 2 weeks. This could be, say, worm juice if you've got a worm farm, compost tea if you've got access to some compost tea, or you can actually buy a seaweed or other type of product which is called liquid fertilizer, and get organic if you can, because this product goes all over the leaves and into the soil of the plant. So it's especially good for growing healthy plants, but keep in mind you are going to be eating these foods, so make sure you use organic products where possible. Now, the liquid is diluted as per the application rate on the bottle. Always make sure you read that, it's really important. You mix it with water in a watering can, or you can use a hand sprayer. Now, I've got I think a 500 ml and a 1 litre sprayer that I spray the foliage of the plant, so around the leaves of the plant, and it's also applied to the soil. Now, the good thing with this is it's like giving your plants a boost of nutrients. So plants will take in nutrients through their leaves and through their roots. When plants are growing in containers, it's really important to give them that optimum nutrients and support them so they grow beautiful and strong and produce lots of food over an extended period of time for you. I suggest either a fortnightly or a monthly dose, and that does depend on the application rate of the product. So you will always find the information on how much to apply when you're buying products for your plants. Make sure you have a look on the bottle or the container that it comes in. It helps to keep your plants strong and healthy, and it will produce more food and more flowers much longer through the season. So that's a really good tip for keeping your plants looking amazing, producing lots of food, and just absolutely thriving. Really helps to keep the soil moist in your containers as well, because plants or the soil growing in smaller containers, that they can actually dry out quicker than plants that are grown in the ground. Make sure you keep the moisture up and your regular dose of organic liquid fertilizer to keep your plants in amazing growth. I hope this has given you a few ideas for growing, and I hope you're now inspired to head outside or to your kitchen and maybe grow some sprouts or some microgreens and try a few of these for yourself. Thank you so much for joining me in the Wellbeing Garden today. I hope you're inspired to consider growing a few different ways in small spaces and really enjoy getting the most out of your gardens and a beautiful abundance of fresh, healthy produce. So I really hope you will join me again next time. Enjoy an amazing day.